Yeah, I know. I'm running late. It's kind of chaotic on this end. Go look at the ocean for a second. I'll be right there. Yeah, hang on. I'm looking for my note. I wrote myself just keep waiting. I'll be right there. Super well organized. Here we go. Cool. Okay, back to the desk. Let's go. Super organized. Well, it's just been a day. So, yeah, lots of stuff going on. Let's press some buttons and do things. Cool.
And now we'll see how good you are. No matter what anybody tells you, words and ideas can change the world.
Ready to work.
Okay. All right. I swear. I think now I'm good. There was chaos here a minute ago. Oh man, there was just a flurry of activity as I had something on the desk. You ever have one of those moments where like I swore it was on the table? I swore I put it there, and then the place I thought I put it, I didn't put it there. So I went crazy looking for it, and of course because it's on like a white notepad and all I own are white notepads, I'm going around the whole space looking for like, well, where the hell is it? What did I do with it? And it fell on the floor. Like that's it was right. I'm pointing. It was right there. It fell off the table, and it was on the floor. So it was, yeah. It's just been like a day. Like I don't know how to tell you this, but it has been like a day. So I'm very thankful to be here. I'm very thankful to be with you. I'm grateful. It's wonderful to see you. Here we are, doing the best we can today. Now, I should point out that if you missed the title, I want to tell you about this picture real quick before we get going. And I know audio people, you're missing out, but just imagine a despondent woman sitting and staring at a laptop as though the fate of the free world is crumbling before her. You know, like a Tuesday. Just picture that. That's the thumbnail that's going to go up on YouTube. That's the title card for tonight. I went looking for. There's a point, I swear I'm bringing this up. I went looking for like a background image to use for this thumbnail, and I couldn't figure out. Like I looked at presentations, I looked at meetings, I looked at conferences, and they were all really boring. So I thought to myself, like, what feeling do people most associate with pitching when they talk about their work? Like, what does everybody think about other than like pants shitting fear? And I just thought about despair or frustration or feeling overwhelmed, and then there is a wealth of, unfortunately, slightly amusing, sad stock photos of people just looking bereft over dumb shit. And it absolutely positively makes me giggle all the time. So when I saw this photo, I'm like, that's it. That's the one. Just this sense of just overwhelming, oh my God, I'm staring at a laptop and things are happening. Perfect. Also, hello. Hi. Thanks for being here. I see you. It's wonderful to see you. Hello from Washington State. Hello from the desk. Hello. Hi. It's so good to see all of you. There are a number of you here, and I am so thankful. As I said, tonight we're doing pitching, but we're not going to do pitching in the usual way. Now, normally when we talk about pitching in like real rigid terms, right? We talk about pitching in that sense of like, this is a pitch contest. This is how you pitch a professional. This is what you have to say, and this is to whom you say it to, and this is how you say it. And that's fine, and that's all well and good, but I'm assuming at this point, hello, good evening, hi. I'm assuming at this point, we know that stuff. I've talked about it, I think now, like at least 12 times in some combination of audio and video. I think I'm over 12. Someone will send me a text message later to tell me exactly the number of times, but I'm reasonably certain in some way, shape, or form, be it a Wednesday night chat question or a Monday night stream, I've talked pitching at length. So we're going to come at pitching in a different way tonight. I wanted to find something different. I wanted to talk about things in a little bit more personal, a little bit more personable, might be a better way to say it, a little bit more human, a little bit more natural way. Because I don't know if you know this. Maybe you do. Maybe you've seen it. Maybe you've been around. But there's been a real movement lately in writer spaces to make some hay, make a big fuss about some really dumb shit. And I don't know what to really say about it. It's just people looking to stir the pot because there's, it's April and there's not a whole lot going on in the publishing world in terms of like award show drama or publication cycles. So we got to argue about something. So, hey, we're going to argue about strategy for publication because that's just what we do. And this led to a discussion of pitching where the conversation hard detoured because the consideration was, oh, pitching's easy. Pitching is just simple. And then everybody talked about how afraid they were to pitch and not knowing how to figure out what to say. And then not knowing who to say it to if they did know what to say. And then feeling frustrated and tired about the fact that they have to say it at all. It was a pretty irritating, like I just read the threads on Twitter and then read a couple blog posts. And I was pretty irritated about it, and I wasn't even involved. So I can only imagine what it was like for somebody who was, neck deep in it, trying to explain, like, oh, pitching's easy? Sure, yeah. Oh, it's just scary. Oh, all right. Like, how many times have we painted that fence? How many times have we said that statement or made that thing possible? And I get it, and I'm not denying that there's some difficulty in talking about our stuff. I'm not denying that there's difficulty when we consider that a pitch for whatever it is this real rigid conceived thing. It has this kind of statement in the beginning. It has this kind of statement in the middle. You say this shit at the end, and it's got to have A, B, and C. Like, we can dress it up and make it real complicated and make it real formal as much as we want. It's fine. Do that. But that's not necessarily the best way to go. And I think dialing in on that definition and living with that definition and making it, carving it into stone and then making it the only way to pitch, I think all that serves to do out of anything else is just make people uncomfortable around pitching. Like, it doesn't help. There's no denying that pitching is important. In traditional publishing, pitching is critical. You're not going to get in the door otherwise. And in self-publishing fields or hybrid publishing fields, pitching is sales. So you're definitely not going to get the result you want without it. You're going to need to learn how to do this. You cannot have a career, at least a commercial career. You can't turn around and sell your shit to other people if you can't pitch. You can still be productive. You can still write all the books and then just throw them out there and then say very little and then hope upon hope that in a world dominated by algorithms and sales copy, that your lack of sales copy and your lack of algorithmic engagement will somehow mean you're going to be discovered, or they're going to back the truck up to your house in terms of money. And I don't know how to tell you this. But if you're thinking that there's some magic bullet to pitching, that there's some single thing you're not doing that all of a sudden once you start doing, it's gonna turn the whole thing around, and all of a sudden it's gonna be flawless. Nothing like that exists. And if you're waiting for that, if you're waiting for an expert, if you're waiting for an industry professional, if you're waiting for, I don't know, somebody on social media to turn around and go, here's what you have to do, you're gonna be waiting a while, because this is also not the place where I'm going to tell you to do that. Like, there's so many things to talk about, so much individuation, so much specificity in pitching that it has to be bespoke and it has to be for you. And you're the only one who can do it your way because you're the only one with your thing. And if you gave the same book to 5 people and said, make me a pitch, I am incredibly confident that each of those 5 people would come up with a different approach. But I am also confident that each of those 5 people would absolutely positively all be really nervous as to whether or not their pitch was effective. And it's that space of intimidation and fear and doubt and anxiety that I want to talk about. The mechanics of the pitch, we'll get into a little. I got some tools for you tonight. But overall, I'm coming at this from a how do I pitch, not mechanically, but like emotionally, mentally. How do I get myself into a position where I can pitch, and how do I pitch in a way that's comfortable for me? Because everybody's comfort level with this is going to be different, and frankly needs to be different. The way I pitch, I don't know how many pitches I've done in 20 years. You figure I'm making pitches to people on multiple times on a daily basis for 20 years. So math. But the way I pitch is not reasonable for me to expect somebody who's been writing for 6 months to be able to do. Maybe they'll do it better. I don't know. But the likelihood of them being able to immediately dive in and do it that way, I think is unrealistic. My only real point of comparison for that, now that I'm thinking about it, is, you know, those moments where like a musician or somebody calls somebody out of the crowd and says, hey, come play this song with us. And sometimes they grab ringers who they know will play the song well because they want to fire up the crowd. But sometimes they grab somebody who kind of, you know, chokes a little bit because, oh my God, they're in front of a huge crowd and it's a whole big deal and it's captured on the internet and it's a whole thing. Yeah, I think that's what it comes across as. I think that's what it feels like when you take a pitch class, or you attend a workshop, or you go listen to somebody speak and they talk about pitching, having already succeeded, having already reached the goal stage of production or whatever. And they talk about pitching in terms of like, well, yeah, it's hard, but you just got to do it. You know, yeah, it's, you know, come on up stage and play our big, you know, #1 hit. Just don't screw it up. I think that's a really unfair expectation, and I think it actually serves to disenfranchise people from doing better, because the thought is that, you know, the bar for pitching, where's my frame, is like miles above your head. You've got to be at least X good to pitch, and that's flat out wrong. That is flat wrong. Now, I'm not saying your pitch, you know, you can get by with a bad pitch. I'm not, where's my camera? I'm not saying that. Look at me. Or if you're listening, listen to me. Your pitch needs to be good. There's no way around that. You're going to need to make a good pitch. But at the same time, there can be varying degrees of good. Like, it's not all going to be bangers. It's not all going to be like, oh, yeah, I nailed it in one. No, you're going to screw this shit up. This is real hard. And the thing I want to talk about, other than giving you a few tools to make it simpler, because one of the problems a lot of people have is overcomplicating a pitch. And I don't really know why. I've got a couple notes as to why I think they do it, but on the whole, like, a lot of people get in their own way when they talk about their work. We'll talk about why later. But yeah, I want to take the fear, some or all, depending on how much fear you have, but I want to take the fangs out of that beast. I want to make this a little bit more straightforward for you. You're still going to have to do the work. You're still going to have to pitch. You're still going to have to think about your work, not in terms of, oh my God, I love my story. Oh my God, my characters are just like the best. You're going to need to think about your story in terms of a sellable, vendable product. You're going to need to think about it in terms of a finished thing that somebody else would want to buy. So you're going to have to make that transition from, you know, I'm just a fun writer making fun stories to I'm a business person producing business, doing stuff. Like, you're going to have to make that switch. And for a lot of people, that can be real tricky because they're so used to bigging themselves up, being a big fish in a small pond in terms of their writer circle or whatever. Oh, I'm a finished writer. I got all this shit done. But then blowing it out to be like, oh my God, a business person, like somebody with a suit, somebody who tucks their shirt in, somebody who's like lame and stuff. Like, I'm not that. I can't do business. I'm just a writer. And they immediately deflate themselves. And I want to sit in that space because I want to disprove it for you because it's wrong. You can be really good at this. You just got to remember a couple rules, and then you use a couple tools, and we're off and go. Rules, tools, and go. And that's what I got tonight. So, can we cover some basics? Are we good? Shall we march on? Let's cover some basics. First of all, as we've talked about, tons of times, a pitch is information plus emotion. That's it. That's it. That's the whole shebang. Information plus emotion. Let's put that graphic back up. Information is fact, statement. This is what my book is. These are who my characters are. Why is that so high up on my head? Hang on, let me drag this down a little bit. I apologize for that. I bet they're all high because anyway. Information is just the statement about your book. Here's your plot. Here are your characters. This is what's up. This is what they're doing. It's discoverable within the text. If I open the book up and I read, this is what I'm going to find. Straightforward stuff. You know the information better than anybody else. And the information is not in dispute because it's in the book. So you can just state what the book has in it. You don't have to state all of it. We'll talk about the quantity of things to talk about in a couple minutes. But information, it's the book. Emotion, well, that's the tricky part. And that's the tricky part because people have a real hard time nailing down not only what emotion they're aiming for, but the fact that they have to aim for an emotion at all. Here's what that means. So it's really emotion 1 plus emotion 2. And I didn't make a fraction graphic for that. But really, you need to have an emotion on your end that you're trying to put out in terms of your information. I want you to read X and feel Y. The same is also true for your fiction, interior, inside the book, but that's more of an editing thing, and this is more like coaching thing. But you need to have an emotion on your end that you're trying to broadcast. Let's call that the outbound emotion, just so that we have a label for it, okay? This outbound emotion is by your design, so you choose. If you want somebody to read a sentence or hear a sentence or read a paragraph in your pitch, if it's a query letter or whatever, if you want them to read some amount of words and then feel excited or nervous or scared or intrigued or turned on or something, then that's your outbound emotion. You're trying to get that idea across. Now, presumably, you are pitching humans, which means you cannot control other people's emotions. I know. I've tried dating people too. Controlling people's feelings is a thing we all try to do at some point. It sucks. It would make the world a lot easier. But here we are. Such is the reality of life. So we have to deal with the fact that we cannot control that my outbound emotion is exactly the thing that somebody else is going to receive. And let's call their reception the inbound emotion. Outbound for me, inbound to them. And if you're listening to this, yes, I did just make the hand gestures you're imagining. So I can control the outbound. I can't control the inbound. So what do? A lot of writers get that far and freak out. Oh my God, what do you mean? I want them to be excited, but if they read this thing, what if they're not excited? Oh shit, my sentence must be wrong. I have to quickly go change this. No, you don't have to do that. That's not a thing. You don't. I mean, you can tinker with your pitch until, the cold death of the universe and just kind of hope and pray it works out at the end of the day. But you don't have to do that at all. In fact, if you overthink it and you start tinkering with it and change everything, you're never going to know what worked if you're always constantly changing and adapting things. You need to give it some space. You need to let some pieces alone, and you need to not constantly rejigger everything because there is no perfect pitch. So I don't know what it is you're looking for, but you're not going to find it because it's not there. You get what I'm saying? It's never going to be perfect. It just needs to be effective. And effective and perfect are not synonymous. There's a whole range, miles and miles of metaphoric space. of effective and a very, very tiny target of perfect. And even perfect can be subjective because what's perfect to me might not be what's perfect to you. Again, you can't control what comes to people, but you can control what goes out of you. So just be clear on what you're trying to do and say to the best of your ability. Information plus emotion equals a pitch. Now, it doesn't matter if this is a tweet, doesn't matter if this is sales copy, doesn't matter if this is a query letter, doesn't matter if this is a verbal elevator pitch, doesn't matter if it's one of those, I don't even know if we'll ever do them again thanks to the pandemic, but one of those big giant cattle call things where everybody gets in a room and marches down a buffet line and says their thing, and then somebody rings a bell and, you go on about your way, and then somebody wins something at the end of the night. Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter how big it is, just matters that a pitch is information plus emotion. Straightforward. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. If you understand that, you know how to build a pitch. Now, whether or not it's going to be a well-crafted pitch, that comes with practice. But that's your core. You're going to need both those parts. Or 3 parts if you're dividing the emotion into outbound and inbound. But you're going to need those bits, and that's it. Information plus emotion. Now, does every piece of information need its own emotion? That's up to you. Sometimes that's a great strategy. Other times, you've got a pile of emotion that can all be captured by a single emotion. So pile of information, I should say, capturable or definable by a single emotion. I want you to read 5 things and feel excited. You don't need 5 separate excitement installments. But everybody's going to do this differently. You just need to know information plus emotion is a pitch. No matter whether it's written, no matter if it's spoken, no matter if it's recorded, no matter if it's long or short or a paragraph or a sentence or a word. Information, emotion, pitch. Straightforward. That's our base. From there, we got to go to the next thing here, which is that not all pitches, again, all my shit's really high up on the page, I'm sorry. Not all pitches are created equal. So what does that mean? Well, the pitch you give at 10 a.m. is not going to be the same as the pitch you deliver at 2 p.m. if you've been working and talking all day. Not all pitches are, going to be as good as each other. Sometimes you're going to just give some duds. You're going to get rejected. You're going to do a bad pitch. Just like sometimes I do a bad recording. Sometimes I'm just not feeling it. Sometimes I am. Sometimes I'm in between. Not all pitches are created equal. You don't have to chase perfection. A pitch is a pitch. It's an attempt. It's an effort to broadcast an outbound emotion and get somewhere in the ballpark for somebody's inbound emotion and perhaps intrigue them, interest them, arouse them, make them think about the potential of things so that they can do further steps. They can say yes and move things forward. That's it. That's it. That's it. Not all pitches are equal. They don't have to be perfect. There's no magic singular pitch that you need to somehow unearth after 10,000 failures or whatever, pop psych nonsense you're thinking. Plain and simple, some pitches suck. Some pitches are great. Some pitches that did suck can be made great. And some pitches that were great can get over-tinkered until they suck. And then a pitch that's great for me might be bad for you. So you just got to try every time. And it's hard and it's frustrating because if it were more mechanical, if it were more uniform in its procedure, then yeah, maybe everybody could just shut up and take their pitch and be happy with it. And the world would be better, but then we wouldn't be doing any of the things we're doing now. And the world would lack a great deal of color in its art as everything starts to homogenize. Not all pitches are created equal. They don't have to be equal. They just have to be effective. Which leads us to the next point, that pitches are not one size fits all. You cannot, you can in the sense that you can always give the same pitch everywhere. It's the one pitch you got, you're just going to ride it into the ground. I see this a lot. Don't do this, by the way. This is stupid. Don't do it. But I see somebody come up with a pitch and they're happy with it, and then that's their pitch. I only have the one, and I'm just going to say it forever. Don't do that. That's terrible. Because yes, theoretically, quantum mathematically, there is one person out there who's going to like that pitch. So I'm just going to keep asking everybody until somebody says yes. Because according to the, horse shit they feed you on social media, it only takes one yes. It doesn't. It takes several yeses stacked up from several different people. But that's a different conversation, maybe. The fact remains, though, that you can't take the same pitch and trot it out 1,000 times. Because it's what are you going to do after 6 rejections? You might start thinking that your pitch is a problem. And in part, it is. But we'll talk about rejection in a second. But you're going to have to come up with, in your life, in your career, even if you only write one book, you're going to have to come up with different ways to pitch it, depending on who it is you're speaking to and what it is you're trying to say and what's going on. It's going to take time. Pitches are not one size fits all. A perfect pitch that is a 30-second pitch might not translate well to be a long query letter or big giant sales copy. Conversely, a long giant sales copy might not be distillable down into an elevator pitch. Pitches are whatever pitches are. Information plus emotion, whatever size they need to be. Not all pitches are universally slotted. You've got to be willing to pitch in loads of different ways, to loads of different degrees, to loads of different people. It's this element, I think, that intimidates the most people. The idea that I'm basically saying you've always got to have multiple pitches. And you've got to be able to pitch somewhat on the fly and somewhat rehearsed, or at least make your rehearsed stuff sound like it's on the fly. But you've got to be able to have like lots of different tools in the toolbox. And that's true, because that's really important. But what you're missing here, and this is really where I want to pivot for the next, I don't know how long, is that you pitch all the time and you don't realize it. You pitch all the time. Whether we're talking about, hey man, do you want to get a pizza? Or what did you think of the movie we just watched? Or have you read this book? Or, oh shit, did you see the game last weekend? Everything like that is a pitch. We don't see it like that because we don't see the immediate gain of it the way we do when we talk about pitching our books. But everything is a pitch because we are trying to constantly and consistently get connection with another person. Now, I'm going to tell you this, and people listening to this might miss this point because it's more visual, so I'll try and describe it. I'm going to say a thing. I'm going to repeat a point I just made, actually, and I'm going to check, and I'm pretty sure this is the moment where some people who are looking for more hardcore writing advice are going to dip out. Here we go. Ready? All we're doing when we pitch is trying to build a connection with another human being, and your ability to pitch speaks directly and fundamentally to your ability to connect to someone else. Pause for 3 seconds. So if you're having trouble pitching, whether you're pitching your book or your comic or your series or your sex work or your napkins or your Etsy shop, which, by the way, don't cross the picket line this week on Etsy. But if you're trying to pitch whatever, you've got to think about it in terms of connecting to another human being and realize that you attempt connection with another human being, whether that's a spouse, a partner, an intimate, a friend, a sibling, a child, a coworker, a classmate, a patron, whatever. You are constantly and consistently trying to connect to other people. And a pitch, albeit a pitch to an editor, an agent, a pimp, a publisher, whomever, is just another person you're connecting to. Yeah, they have a job title. You have a job title. They have a job title. You have a job title. You're a writer. They have a job title. They're the pitch receiver. You're just people, so speak to people. You do it all the time. Now, if you think you don't do it well, practice. Guess what? You can practice this. It's pretty straightforward. I've got some tools for you. But the whole fundamental clue in pitching is to get out of the idea that, oh, this is publishing, and, it has to be a thing, and there's a very specific, procedure. No, just talk to people. Who gives a shit that they're in suits? Now, here's the moment where a lot of people go, but John, if they reject my pitch, I'm not gonna have my career. They're literally holding my future in their hands. Well, they're not, because you can always go find another way to produce your work. It might be a different way than you intended, but you can still produce it. And y- they can say no because there's always somebody else somewhere who will listen. You could always try again. You can always retool your pitch. It's not like, you're one and done here. We just talked about that. Pitching is a people skill. That's right, Dave, over there in chat. Pitching is a people skill. You've got to connect to people. Now, we do that in a lot of different ways. We do that to a lot of different degrees. We do that through a lot of different lenses and filters. And you've got to be able to navigate those and identify those and know when to use them and know when not to use them, which is, again, why we practice. But pitching is just connecting to another human being, only this time, instead of asking whether or not they want to have a pizza, you're asking, hey, do you want to check this book out? If it sounds like I'm simplifying this, if it sounds like I'm boiling out the heart of it, if I'm taking away some of the mysticism of it, and I'm making it practical and realistic, that's because it should be. Because pitching is just talking. I'm talking to you right now. Presumably, at some point today, you've spoken to another human being too. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. I don't know. You do you. But the idea is that we've communicated in one way, shape, or form with others at some point, and knowing when to dial that up, dial it down, and tweak it is the foundation for our ability to pitch. So I've got, as I move from one side to the other, I've got a whole pile of tools here on my notepad in terms, and sadly, I don't have graphics for these, so you're just going to have to imagine a few things, but I have some tools to simplify things, to keep things straight, to talk about what works in pitches and what doesn't, and why people overuse things or underuse things, and how to do better with it. So I'm going to move my chair just for a second because I've been sitting all day, and my hips are very slowly becoming numb. It's been one of those days. It's just been like I know I'm moving the camera, and that drives people nuts. I'm sure I'm going to hear about that later, but hey, here we are. We're just hanging out in the back of the office. So we're going to pitch. We want to pitch. We need a book. So you have your book, whatever the hell it is. The first thing you're going to want to do, and I don't care whether you have to ultimately write a query letter or sales copy or both or an elevator pitch, the first thing you have to do, no matter what it is you're pitching, no matter if it's the first book, the sixth book, whether it's your first time, your 90th time, whatever, the minute you have something to pitch, you need to be able to get the most central idea of it, whether that's the plot or the character arc or the world or something, the most critical idea, the thing you absolutely positively super duper duper must get across to another person. You have to get that down into 1 to 2 sentences. And you've got to keep those sentences fairly short. Now, what short is, that's up to you. But the reason we're doing them, the reason why we're keeping the core principal primary idea short is so that if we have to go turn this into a pitch or a verbal thing and I only got 20 seconds on the clock, or if I have to do this as a tweet, or if I have to do this in some short form, because it's already shaped in a short way, it's not that hard for me to lift and paste or lift and amend into position. And if I have to, instead from doing a small thing, do a big thing, I at least have a strong base to operate from that's clear. So step 1, no matter what we're pitching, but step 1, condense the core idea down to 1 or 2 sentences where the sentences themselves are not individually complex. Let's make this point real clear for some of you out there, because I know you're thinking it. Having a really complicated sentence structure in your pitch does not demonstrate the better quality of the book you're pitching. It just means that you can write a complicated sentence to talk about your book, which is not the thing they're hiring you for. It's not the thing they're going to pay your book with. It doesn't demonstrate quality. It mostly demonstrates that you're kind of annoying. So don't overcomplicate this. Don't reinvent the wheel. Don't over-engineer it. 1 to 2 fairly straightforward sentences. I'm not talking, don't swing the other way and go, see Dick run Dick run. That's not, if that works, that works. But by and large, I'm not talking like little itty bitty, I'm learning to read sentences, but I'm also not talking like, here is a sentence that is itself a whole paragraph with like 2 semicolons and some em dashes and 5 commas. Don't go wild with it. Just 1 to 2 sentences straightforward. That's the base from which you are going to build everything else we're going to talk about. So if you're doing this at home while you're listening to this or watching this, I'm going to press a button that I've never pressed before, and I'm going to get a mouthful of tea, and I don't know what's going to happen. I know it's not going to disconnect the stream, so let's go that. And I know audio people, I don't know what's going to happen on your end. You might have to listen to me, like, drink some tea. I don't even know if my mic's going to come back in. We're going to find out together because I finally got access to this button, so we're going to press it, but also I need a mouthful of tea. So take this time, this 30 seconds or so, and either pause this if you're watching it, not live. Hi, YouTube. You can pause it and come up with your 1 to 2 sentences. If you're over in chat, compile some sentences. If you're listening to this, well, I'm going to drink some tea and then I'll be right back, okay? Here we go. Pressing this button. I appreciate your patience. If this is a disaster, by the way, I swear to you, I will never press this button again, but I finally got this button, and I want to see what it does. Ready? 1, 2, 3. It's not doing anything on my end. I have no idea what it's doing on their end. So, I mean, it came up with a little green check mark, so it did something. But I'm going to count to 10 because I have to make noise. And then we'll just sort of resume, okay? By the way, I hope you guys are doing well. Nothing? It didn't do anything? I'm being informed that it didn't do jack shit. I'm really pissed. All right, so this is supposed to be the button that auto plays an ad. And then if I auto play it, it won't randomly just dump. You didn't see any? Son of a fucking bitch, man. God damn it. Okay. Look, I got this button that allows me to put an ad in, or at least that's what the button swears it can do. So that way it doesn't automatically just stop randomly and assert its own ads. And it's supposed to also extend into the podcast so that when it doesn't auto place ads just when I get quiet. Like, there's a good chance that in the podcast feed an ad just went there. But apparently, when I pressed the button, it didn't do anything other than tell me that it did do something. I don't know what it did. So let's never press that button again, but we tried. So look at that. Just like our pitches, we've tried. So I hope if you've paused this video and come back, or you watched me get a mouthful of tea, or you've otherwise been listening to this, you've got your 1 to 2 sentences. Doesn't matter what your book is. Doesn't matter what your genre is. Doesn't matter how crowded your genre is. Doesn't matter who you... No. Give me your 1 to 2 sentences, okay? Got that ready? Because now we're going to move forward. Here we go. One of the first things people do when they're trying to construct a pitch, and it's not necessarily bad that they do it, but it can be a problem, is they try somewhere in their pitch, in their query, in their tweet, in their sales copy, somewhere, in their back blurb, somewhere, they decide they're going to put in a question or two, sometimes more. I cannot express to you the size of the sigh I want to do because the microphone has a noise gate and can only encompass so much sound. But know that the sigh I feel when I read questions in pitches is probably what you imagine, like, you know, an ad play. Hang on a second. An ad played for me the second the button was hit. Not sure if it was a coincidence. All right, Dave. I have no clue. I wish I knew, but shrug. But I'm never going to press it again because it didn't do what I thought it was going to. I thought it was going to come over here, and it didn't work. Anyway, we're going back. A question makes it... They're not fundamentally bad, okay? They're not bad. If you've been using questions in your pitches, in your tweets, in your queries, in your back blurbs, it's not bad. You're not wrong. You're not breaking any rules. You're just... You could be doing so much better. The problem with a question is that one of two, you just made, because no matter what your question is, you've just made one of two conditions true. Either one, the rest of that paragraph, the rest of the pitch, if it's real short, the rest of the next couple sentences have to either align with the stuff talked about in the question, and this is why those questions are so often framed as like real vague or hyperbolic or melodramatic, like, can love survive time travel? like on its face, on its premise, by the ideas, love and survival and time travel sound like interesting ideas, but that question is a garbage question. That is a bad question. And I thought of it on purpose to be a bad question because it's the sort of thing that people slap into a tweet or slap into a query letter because it sounds like, oh shit, that's going to be engaging. It's not, because you've just required that whatever next thing or things I say either has to align with love, survival, and time travel, or it's going to be completely kind of disjointed and stand out. Because all of a sudden we're going to talk about something totally different and it's going to feel like the two things don't align well. That's the problem with a question, especially if the question is at the beginning of a thing. The beginning of a tweet. Oh, God, they're lethal when they're at the beginning of a tweet because you don't have that much space to begin with. So we're going to start with a question and you're going to pigeonhole the rest of what you're going to say. Can this work? Sure, it can work. It doesn't have to automatically be bad, but you are making it harder on yourself, especially if you have so many things to talk about and so much to say. You know what I mean? You want to make sure that if you're going to use a question, you're using it purposefully. Now, hang on. Hold up. Maybe some of you out there are like, well, you're just talking about questions at the beginning. What if I put my question at the end? Okay. All right. I see what you did there. That sounds clever. Okay. Here's the problem with that. Again, it's not bad. It's not wrong. You could do that. It's totally okay. But by putting your question at the end, if your question is still vague and hyperbolic and melodramatic and speaking only in broad concepts, whatever you talked about prior to the question, all those juicy details about your characters and the plot and the world, the specifics, they're all going to get kind of minimized by the fact that you wrapped things up real broad and vague. It's going to come across like you didn't know how to stop talking about your thing. It's going to come across like you don't have an ending. You're just going to kind of go and then move on. Like it's going to feel disjointed, which is what we want to try and avoid doing. So is it like the worst in the world? No. Can you do it sometimes? Sure. You can. There's two different tools I've got for you to help make them more effective if you want to go this way. It's a tool in the toolbox. We can use this. It's all right. The first thing you want to do is specific questions. Tailor them to a thing. Rather than talk about, can love survive time travel? Rather than do that, tie it down more. Dial it in. Marjorie needs to know if her relationship can survive the fact that Bill just learned how to travel through time. Actually, that's more the second tool than the first. But anyway, you can take your question verbatim as a question and reframe it. Will Marjorie's relationship with Bill survive now that he knows how to time travel? That's how you'd frame it as an overt question. The other way I talked about is called an implied question, where you don't create the question in text with a question mark and punctuation and stuff, but you craft a sentence that within it, there's some element, phrase, concept, stack of words, chain of ideas, or whatever, to lead the reader to have the question in their head. Marjorie wants to know if her relationship can survive Bill's new time travel. The question implied by it is, will their relationship survive Bill's new time travel? That's the difference between an overt question, also called an explicit question, but explicit's misleading because it's not like salacious or racy. It's just out in the open, overt, uncovered, not camouflaged, apparent, versus an implied question, an unstated question, a leaned into question, a subtext question if you really want to split MFA dork hairs. By manipulating whether or not you are having the reader, whether they're reading a query or a pitch or a back blurb or whatever, sales copy, whatever, by manipulating, and it is manipulating. Don't get hung up on that word and immediately assume a negative connotation. It's just a different way of saying by encouraging somebody to do a thing. It's not necessarily automatically bad and forceful. Don't freak out. But by manipulating whether or not you are stating the question and having the person therefore read a question, or whether you are implying a question and encouraging them to do some thinking on their own, questions are still a valuable tool when it comes time to converting people into whether or not they're going to make a sale or say yes or move forward in some way. Questions. That's tool number 1. And again, you ask questions all the time. Hey, man, we're going to get a pizza. What's the implied question there? Would you like a pizza? Now, we can turn that implied question into an overt question. Hey, you want to get some of this pizza we're going to have? What do you want on your pizza is also another version of this. You ask these questions all the time, and we do it without thinking, but what are we pitching when we do it? We are pitching the idea that, like, hey, in 15, 20 minutes, we're going to have a pizza. Do you want some? And then we, the listener, will sit there and go, do I feel like pizza? And then you immediately start to think about, like, well, what kind of pizza do I want? And then you move forward. Remember, you pitch all the time and don't think twice about it. I'm just asking you to apply that same level of understanding to the book stuff. Because you think about the book all the time, right? That's what writers tell me, whether they're coming to me for editing, coming to me for coaching, just coming to me to come say hi and ask me in like a 30-minute thing, whatever. Oh my God, I can't stop thinking about this book. Here's what I want to do. I want to do this. I want to have this career. I want to make this money. I want to do this. I want to do that. And that's great. And that's wonderful. And I'm so happy for you. That's fantastic. Good for you. But let's not build extra architecture here. Let's not make this more complicated than it needs to be. The act of producing art and creating a story that is cohesive and allows other people to feel something and then therefore wants to give you money for that feeling, like that's already a lot, right? Like that's a lot of shit. Why do we have to make this harder? Why do we have to tuck our shirt in? Why do we have to like look a certain way and sound a certain way? Is it because we've conflated the idea of professionalism with quality? Perhaps, comrades, that's an issue for capitalism, which is more of a Wednesday night thing, but all the same, I'm going to swing now for you because it doesn't, professional is a trap. It's a generally sexist proposition. It's generally a racist proposition. Don't sweat professional. Just talk about your shit. Just talk about your work. And do it in the same sort of casual way you do everything, and it's going to be fine. Because if you can turn to somebody and go, hey, do you want to get a pizza? Or, hey, do you want to go check out this movie? Those are just valid forms of pitching, just like, here is my query letter, here is my pitch, here is my back blurb. It's the same thing. It's just a different format. And all format is a medium through which to transact one idea to another person. That's it. That's the whole of it. That's the magic trick here. You can take the fear, some, not all, because it's up to you, but you can take some of the fear out of pitching, not by reducing the quality of the pitch, but by reducing the architecture we've constructed around it. We're just talking to somebody. We're just trying to make a connection. And just like when you meet people and encounter them, whether it's through text messaging or apps or in person or work or whatever, not everybody's going to vibe with each other. And that's okay. You don't need everybody to be your friend, do you? I mean, I'm a terribly lonely, depressed human being. And even I don't want everybody to be my friend. I'll take a few more friends. I'm always down for more friends, but I don't need like everybody. Have you met everybody? Some of the people are weird. I don't want them to come hang out with me. Other people totally come hang out with me, but that's up to me to decide who that is. Just like it's up to me to decide how I want to engage with these people. Just like it's up to you to decide, here's how I'm going to tell you, person over there, here's what's up with my book. Versus when I talk to that person over on that other side of the room, hey, here's what's up with my book. It's going to be a completely different person and a completely different experience. So we just connect with people. Another mouthful of tea. I'm not pressing the ad button again. Just, you're going to have to watch a video of me drinking tea or wait 10 seconds while I swallow a mouthful of liquid, and then we'll move on. Cool? Cool. Oh, man, what a day. Shall we move on to tool number 2? Tool number 2, really straightforward. It's fact. Fact. That's it. Fact. Facts are things that really, just are, and they can't be disputed. They're all the things that are in your book. And because they're in the book and we can point to them and go, hey, look, there it is in the book on that page right here. Here's the character's name. Here's what they do. This is what's going on. This is the plot. Your facts are automatically true. Now, we live in a world dominated or slowly becoming dominated by people who want to dispute fact because they want to create argument, because they are misunderstanding the balance between emotion and information in their pitch. So they want to lean you in their pitch more towards emotion to get you to agree or disagree or at least stir the pot and cause some shit. and disregard emotion because you can't trust the emotion if you can't trust the information if it disagrees with their emotion. Maybe you've encountered these humans in the world. They swear up and down that like, oh, science is horseshit. Or, oh, that's not how this thing works. That's not how this is, that's not the reality of this or not the reality of that. And it's because they're almost always going to make an emotional statement and disregard the information because the information doesn't serve their emotion. But you have facts. You have concrete evidence in your book. Now, I know your book is about made-up people doing made-up things, and some of them are fantasy novels with made-up creatures doing made-up shit. I know, but that's not the point. The point is that within the constraints of your book, cover to cover, in your brain, those are facts to you. This is just how the shit is. Fact. Now, we use facts all the time, but we take a fact, and that facts are almost always nouns, just so we're clear, because they're just existential creations, and we partner them with an adjective to create something descriptive, something evocative. Now, the adjective and the noun we partner together, the noun comes from the text itself, but we might not have an adjective that really fits appropriately for the pitch, so we have to invent one. We got to think one up. But the adjective is the emotion to the noun's information. Information plus emotion equals a pitch. So when I have a sentence like, Margaret is a disheveled princess, I can point in my book to where Margaret is a princess. And I can point in my book to a paragraph or a description in a scene that I'm summarizing for the purpose of the pitch as disheveled, even if I don't use that word in the book. Maybe I do, maybe I don't, doesn't really matter. But information plus emotion equals pitch. Noun plus adjective equals fact. Evocative fact, technically. But I'm creating an image in your brain. But wait, hang on. I can see some of you freaking out there, or if you're listening on the podcast, I can hear some of you freaking out. Because underneath this, just beneath the surface, there's this idea that when I say disheveled, you immediately understand what I'm saying. My level of disheveled is the same as your level of disheveled. And it's not. And it's not going to be. And it doesn't need to be. I just need you in the ballpark. I just need you more or less kind of sort of around the thing. Adjective, noun, evocative imagery. Now, can you do this without an adjective? Absolutely. You can just drop some nouns and totally come up with a statement that provokes people, creates some interest because of the presentation, because of the words you choose and the order you put them in. Absolutely. Here's an example. For 1,000 years, a dragon slept beneath the castle. Now, let's take that apart. So we can point in our book, maybe we have a prologue, maybe it's a fantasy novel, right? We have a prologue that talks about the dragon sleeping beneath the castle for 1,000 years. But because of the way we constructed the sentence, we've also got an implied question in there. Look at the verb. For 1,000 years, a dragon slept. Past tense. The implied question is the dragon still asleep? What happens if the dragon isn't asleep? Those two conditions depend or lead us to depend on what comes next in the second sentence. In a pitch, whether it's a query letter, sales copy, Twitter pitch, back blur, whatever, your goal is to get the person reading one sentence after the other cumulatively to reach the end. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many sentences, they roll the snowball down the hill, they reach the end. So if my first sentence can engage you to some degree with something evocative, and I can lead you to read the second sentence, now all of a sudden I've got two possibly evocative images, two facts, two things to pitch, some information and some emotion working together, continuing this idea towards the end, all trying to provoke you to say yes, to interest you, to engage you, to make you feel a thing, to connect with you. Now, it doesn't matter if I hard pivot from 1,000 years ago, for 1,000 years, the dragon slept beneath the castle, to the opposite of it, now the dragon is awake. Or if I, create a further sense of, idyllic peace because I say something like, for 600 years, no one believed in magic. Okay, sure. I mean, I'm making this up on the fly here, but it gives you maximum freedom because it's fact. No one's going to debate it in your book. You wrote it, so use it. Use it as a tool. Use it to make a concrete building block, a launching pad, so that you can step from here to there, and up and up and up, or out and out and out, or whatever figurative visual trajectory metaphor you want to use to give you a platform and move forward. How many of these do you need? I don't know. How many you got? You want to do 2, do 2. You want to do 10, do 10. It depends on what it is you're making. Obviously, your Twitter pitch is going to be much shorter than your back blurb for your book, or your query letter, or your sales copy on your website. Because these are all different things. They all have different lengths. But they're all going to be buried and wrapped around the same tools. Now, we do this stuff all the time when we talk about how we feel. Oh, man, I'm really bummed today. You don't have to qualify that. You don't have to hand out some medical research that, to demonstrate that you understand what it's like to be bummed. You can just say, I'm having a really rough day. It sucks today. I'm hurting. I'm tired. I'm sore. I'm lonely. I'm frustrated. I'm angry. I'm sad. Whatever. You don't have to stop and go, I have experienced these feelings 22 times in the last 31 instances. You don't need to qualify it. You just need to say it, and that's how it is. So why do you think you need to qualify it with your book? You wrote your book. It's in the book. Just connect with the person. Just connect with the person. Just connect with the person. Straightforward. Everybody good so far? Makes sense? Questions? I'm going to get another mouthful of tea. Questions? Anybody? Adjective plus noun to create evocative imagery. And you don't need to get the person on the other end, the receiver of this. You don't need to get them totally accurate. If you say, disheveled princess, you don't need to describe they don't need to know the exact inch by inch, atom by atom description of your idea of the word disheveled. You just need them in the ballpark. Why? Because specificity doesn't win you anything extra. You don't get a bigger advance because they totally understood when you talked about how the car was beat up, exactly the nature of the dents or how much rust it had. You just need them thinking about a beat up car. Yes, the manuscript is going to get more specific than that. Sure, absolutely. That's what manuscripts are for. But you don't need, it's not like a school thing, right? It's not a quiz. It's not a test. You don't have to get 100% to have somebody love you. You don't need that. You can just say beat up and call it a day and move on and move forward. Don't get hung up on the trappings of needing it to be like, I've said this and you've gotten it 1,000% perfect in your brain, because that's not how brains work. That's not how things go. That's just not how this works. So don't get hung up on trying to get direct, perfect, flawless transmission. We can be in the ballpark. It can have a little bit of static. It can be imperfect. But you want to aim for evocative imagery when it comes to a pitch. Now, whether we're talking about the start of a pitch, the middle of a pitch, the end of a pitch, or the beginning of a query, the middle of a query, end of a query, it doesn't matter. The concept of evocative imagery is what I'm going for. All right, mouthful of tea time. Oof. All right. On we go to the next one. Tool number 3. Statements. The most concrete building block of communication. Statements. You're just saying how things are. There's no reason to question them. There's no reason to deny them. You don't need to run like a focus group to prove it. That's just how shit is in the book. The reader of most pitches, queries, sales copy, etc., they're not looking to disprove. Hang on, we're going to lean in a little bit so you hear me when you see me when I say this. The people trying to decide whether or not they're going to buy your book, whether we're talking about agents, pimps, editors, publishers, or consumers, they're not reading your whatever they're reading or listening to. They're not reading or listening to it trying to disprove you. This isn't a debate online where we're going to totally own the other person or completely destroy them, because that's not how this works. They're trying to figure out whether or not they're going to buy your book. And you're trying to figure out how to connect with them in a way that encourages them to buy the book. Nobody's owning anybody here. This is not, I'm going to destroy that guy in a debate. Yeah, I made air quotes, podcast people. That's not what's happening here. Just statements. If you want to say that every 20 years a comet streaks across the sky and somebody somewhere, is suddenly granted incredible magical power that might destroy them or it might save all of existence, well, that's just how shit is in your book. Or if you want to talk about how, this young lawyer barely got out of law school and now he's trying his first case and he's terrified because the person he's defending is his sister that he didn't know was still alive. Well, that's just how it is in the book. Like it doesn't have to, I can't express to you how frustrating it is to read or listen to people making pitches where they go out of their way to like make a statement and then they spend twice as long proving it or explaining it. Like I didn't come to buy your book so that you could verify for me that you made up a thing. If I'm going to buy, let's say, your romance novel, just hypothetically, I'm going to buy a romance novel. It could happen. I don't need you to explain to me how love works. I need you to demonstrate 2 people, 3 people, 5 people, 10 people, or whatever in some kind of relationship. I'll figure out the particulars of my understanding of love later. Your book is just an example of it. Or if we're writing a fantasy novel, I don't need you to tell me how similar you are to Lord of the Rings. I need you to tell me your story. I already have a copy of Lord of the Rings. It's over there on the other table. I don't need to be resold a book I already own. I need to be sold your book. If I'm working for a publisher and your query letter rolls across my inbox, right? What I'm looking for is not verification that you can tick a certain number of boxes. Well, they talked about plot, they talked about character, they talked about this. I could give a shit. Doesn't matter. I want to know through a combination of statements and emotions and facts and just presentation that you understand that my role in publishing is to produce this item with you so that other people will buy it. I'm looking at sales potential when I read query letters, when I work for a publisher. I'm trying to take a thing that you made and figure out, well, how do I sell this thing? That's all I'm doing. It's not a grade. I'm not trying to make up for the fact that in your 8th grade class, Miss Harder suddenly decided that she was really angry at you for knowing more terms than she did because you spent the period before your class like reading ahead in the book. And so she got real mad at you and then flunked you on a quiz. I'm still bitter. I deserved at least a C. She didn't have to give me an F just to prove a point. But anyway, I haven't thought about her in ages. She still annoys me. I don't think she was old then. I don't think she's still around to haunt me now. But I'm not looking in like a grade kind of way. I'm trying to get across that I'm just looking to connect with a person. Hey, person who wants to buy a book, I've got this book. Let me tell you about it in a way that like makes you want to go, oh, I have $2.99 here. I'll take a copy of that. I want to feel things. I want to have that experience. I want to know shit. There you go. There's your book. That's all a publisher's doing. They're facilitating a transaction. The same thing you're doing when you write sales copy. You're facilitating a transaction. You are not addressing the prior wrongs of 10 years of trauma. You are not making up for the fact that you didn't get enough hugs as a kid. You're just facilitating a transaction. It doesn't need to be more complicated than that. You're just talking to other people and they're doing stuff. Statements facilitate that. Statements make that possible. And if it sounds like I'm really dumbing down the pitching process, it's because a statement is the most simple building block in the pitching process. It's just a thing. Cleveland is a city in Ohio. Statement. On average, in most major cities on the planet, there are more insects than there are people. Statement. I don't need to, run out and commission a study. I just need to make a statement because my book and the development of the rest of my pitch will verify, yeah, I made air quotes, verify this idea well enough so that you can get into the story. Again, since I'm not making nonfiction, I don't need it to be like earth perfect. I need it to be enjoyable. Or if enjoyable's like not enough of a word for you, how about I need it to be interesting? So if in my made up world, I need to like slightly change some things, it's cool. I don't think the like real world Cleveland's going to get mad if I decide that my monster story takes place in Cleveland. It's just not they're not concerned with that. Don't worry about it, and it's going to be fine. It's going to be just fine. Statements. We make them all the time. I feel this way. That's that way. That thing over there is that thing over there. We combine statements with one another as well as with just emotions and a tool we're going to talk about in next, actually, to better shape language to steer people in a certain direction, i.e., please say yes to my book. Next tool. Please. Or just so that I'm not confusing you, I'm not talking like the magic word your mom taught you. I mean, please and appeals. P-L-E-A-S's. Please. And appeals. When you screw this one up, it's going to sound desperate. When this one goes well, you are connecting with your listener or reader. Here's what I'm talking about. So, a very, very common one that you'll see in sales copy, for instance, is called the plea to scarcity, which is a very stiff, dorky kind of name for FOMO, fear of missing out. A plea to scarcity is, order now, supplies limited. Don't be the last one on your block. It's a plea to scarcity. You don't want to miss this. There's a limited number of things. You better, get to doing something about it. Otherwise, you'll miss it. And you don't want to be somebody who misses things, do you? A plea to scarcity in a pitch, in a query, just in a statement, creates the idea that the thing you're talking about that could be potentially scarce is more special than a thing that itself isn't scarce. Only 200 of these will be made. Oh, okay. I don't want to not get one. I better run out and get one. A great example. PlayStation 5. Xbox Series X. It is very likely that if you are not following a few social media accounts that talk about when things are going to go into inventories, you are, and assuming you're not willing to pay scalper prices, you might have a hard time getting one of these things. It's I tried for 3/4 of a year. They're hard to get. The important thing there is that in order to capitalize people attempting to get into it, attempting to try, attempting to engage with the thing, they're making an appeal to scarcity. Hurry, supplies are limited. Call now. How would we use that in a pitch for our book, though? There's only one hero who can save the world. There's only one child of prophecy fated to wield the magic sword to knock out the dragon. It doesn't have to be framed as a question. It doesn't have to be framed as a sentence with an exclamation point. It just needs to be stated that at some point there's some amount of scarcity or rarity or exclusivity that's coming across in the statement. Let's do another plea. How about a plea to challenge? Now, this we see in sales copy, but we also see it in tweet pitches because it's great for a real short, attention-grabbing statement. We see this in commercials. 4 out of 5 dentists recommend this toothbrush. That speaks highly about the idea that 4 out of 5 people, a majority of people, recommend a toothbrush, and it really doesn't get you thinking about that 5th guy. It's just kind of oh, that guy didn't pick the toothbrush. We don't question why, just that, oh, well, he didn't, whatever. Most people liked it. I'll just lean with the majority. How this turns into a writing thing, it's pretty straightforward because we look at the language when we pitch, particularly in tweets because we've got a small space, to say something like, and it's almost always an adjective. Something like, this gripping thriller is this book plus this book plus this book. We are immediately grabbing different ideas and suggesting a challenge to it. Oh, did you like 1, 2, and 3? Then you're going to like this book. You also see this in query letters as comps. Now, again, I'm still firmly anti-comp. If you don't know what a comp is, because you're new here, hi, new people. A comp is a comparative. It's a book you're referencing that you're saying is related to or has something in common with your book. The danger with a comp, other than the fact that you are spending space talking about your book, now talking about someone else's, is that you could pick books that I hate and you're never going to know because you don't know the person to whom you're speaking to. But that doesn't matter because most people use a comp to make a quick decision rather than read the rest of your query. So really you're giving them an out. You're giving them a lazy way to speed through their job and they'll still reject you. Or, see, to get around that, what they'll tell you is that a comp just wants to make sure you understand that you've read other things in your genre. Yeah, that doesn't mean anything. I'm going to talk about this on Wednesday, but it doesn't matter, honestly, if you've read in your genre and can reference the 5 most popular books in your genre, because you could not read those 5 books, but have read 100 other ones and still be able to speak to the things that make your genre your genre. When you talk about framing your genre in terms of its most popular books, you're turning your writing into a popularity contest, which is not itself art. But it's a great way to be commercial. It's a great way to be very capitalistic. It's a great way to facilitate publishing's exploitation of art, which is something we're not interested in doing. So don't sweat comps. They don't fucking do anything. They're the lazy child's way of getting out of doing work. It's sort of like when you tell a kid to clean their room and they stuff all their shit under the bed. It's out of the way, which is what you told them to do. Clear off the, get the carpet, clear some space. Well, they just shove everything out of the way. They technically sort of did it. That's a comp. Don't sweat them. Go talk about your work. It's a lot easier. You want to do one more plea? How about a plea to interest? This is a good one. So, kind of springboarding off that idea that you have to know your genre, which you do. You have to know what makes your genre work. You can't say your book's a legal thriller, for instance, and then not know what makes a legal thriller different than like a psychological thriller. And it's not just the fact that there are lawyers. But every genre is made up of certain stuff, right? There are certain things we count on when we talk about a child of prophecy story. There are certain things we expect. If you're talking about an ensemble fantasy story, you need a certain thing. If you're talking about a murder mystery, obviously you need a body. Stuff like that. The same is also true when we talk about making things within your genre. And we do this when we try to be persuasive. We do this in pitches. We do this in tweets. We do this in sales copy. We do this in back blurbs. We do this when we're writing, trying to get like reviews, and when we're trying to get pull quotes that we can slap on the covers of our stories. It's an appeal to interest, which is, and most commonly, you're going to see this, for instance, on Instagram with trailers for movies or trailers or commercials for things that have already been out. So, for instance, you'll get something like, see the #1 action movie in the country, or this thing is certified fresh, or is it fresh from Rotten Tomatoes? Certified 100% fresh. What they're doing is they're saying of all the things, all the action stories, all the books, all the movies coming out right now, this one is the best. And they're probably appealing to the fact that you're somebody who goes and engages with that kind of media. Now, sometimes it gets more specific. See the #1 superhero movie. Okay. Chances are, if you're a superhero movie consumer, you're going to go check that movie out. That interest puts you in like where's my graphic? Or at least my screen. Where it puts you in a little in-group. You are within the subset of people who would engage with that content already. If you were somebody who was not interested in that, like let's say you're going to use this for a romance novel and you're not normally a romance novel reader, then this won't necessarily work as well. They'll have to work a little bit harder. You have to combine other language and other tools to sort of persuade you and lead you towards, maybe I'll check it out. But an appeal to interest is effective in terms of adjectives when we're describing stuff, most commonly in sales copy. When we talk about the book as a product, now you'll see this with like pull quotes, especially because it's really easy to be marketable that way. Read the book with its, this gripping erotic thriller challenges, blah, 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 blah. The tension crackles across the page. No, tension doesn't crackle across the page. That's just an adjective. That's just an appeal to interest. If you're interested in crackling dialogue or dialogue that's really like, oh, then this is a good example of that. An appeal to interest. Shall we go on to the next tool? Let's go to the next tool. Okay. Next tool. Last tool. Procedure. This one gets a little complicated, so I'm going to try and yank some of the jargon out. Procedure, also called procession, it's the same thing, is the way you organize which idea before and after which other idea. So A to B to C, that's its procession. It precedes A to B to C. How did you pick A, and how did you know that B came after A, and how do you know that C comes after B? Those decisions, that decision-making process determines a lot about how you construct your pitch or your query or your sales copy or your back blurb or whatever it is we're talking about. And this is one of those points where people get real jammed up, like incredibly jammed up, because it comes down to, well, I got to make a choice. Where do I start? Oh God, what do I like? Do I talk about the character? Do I talk about the world building? Do I talk about the plot? What do I do? Well, let's rewind for a minute and think about what we talked about like an hour and change ago. Okay, remember when I told you that you wanted to grab your boil your core idea down to 2 sentences? Whatever that core idea was, whether it was plot, whether it was, action, whether it was character, whatever that core idea that encapsulates your book, that's going to be the first thing you start with. Why? Because it was the first thing you want to build from. It's the most core. It's the center point around which all other things will be either orbiting or constructed. That's why you start there. Now, if it's a sentence and you're happy with the sentence, put it as a sentence and let's move on. If it's an idea, crystallize it, turn it into a sentence. If it's a paragraph, great, it's a paragraph. Whatever it is in terms of size and scale, up to you. Doesn't ultimately matter. Up to you entirely. But where this comes out and how this works and what this does is that it gives you the ability to organize certain ideas and say that even though in the book it might come across in a different order, or there might be you might be in the query saying A, B, C, but in the book there's also A sub 2 and B sub 6 and C sub 3 or whatever. So there's all these little offshoots. The query doesn't need to detail them because it's not a table of contents. The query is a presentation of facts to encourage someone. And I'm using the word query because it's most often done in a query, but you can do this in a pitch. You can do this in sales copy. You can do this in a back blurb. The procession issue here is just an organization of ideas to align you in one certain way, one lens through which you view things, where a number of ideas align. You're not discounting things. You're not saying that, it's not A, B, and C. You're not making shit up. You're not, claiming the opposite or the contrapositive or anything like that. You're just saying that I'm taking this arrangement of these ideas. I'm not writing about these other 10 ideas. I'm just saying these things right here. When I present them this way, I'm hoping to evoke a certain emotion. We do this all the time. This happens all the time. It used to happen to you all the time when you were a kid. Here you go. You go ask an adult what's for dinner. Now, if it's a meal you've had before, how would they describe it to you? They'll tell you it's your favorite thing. Oh, tonight, man, we're doing, it's hamburgers and French fries. And you love hamburgers and French fries. So this is an easy sell for you. The procession of facts to hamburger and French fries immediately puts a picture in your head, generates some interest, and you're sold. But when it was a meal that you maybe weren't so keen on, but you knew they loved, or it was a meal that just didn't do it for you because maybe it was new, mom got a new cookbook, and it was time to test it out, or dad was, trying to make this thing work, and he was wanting you to, not have pizza for the umpteenth time. So we're trying something different. How would they frame that? Because they don't know how you're going to react to it. Ask an adult what's for dinner, and you'll get the answer, I have no fucking idea. Yeah, that's fair. I've been there. Maybe it's not a great example, but I was trying to illustrate the idea that if you're going to get pitched an idea and you're not quite sure what to do with it, they try to find an organization of ideas to make it sound appealing. Because it might be a casserole, and it might all be kind of beige and gross and mushy, but they're going to talk about it in terms of like, oh, it's got cheese and potato, and you like potatoes. They're basically French fries. And it's got cheese, and you like cheese. And it's warm, and it's a crappy day out, so a warm food would be good. You find different avenues to align certain things. You don't talk about like the parsley on top. You don't talk about, oh, well, it's full of niacin. Who gives a shit about niacin? I'm trying to organize it so this kid eats dinner. I'm trying to pick and choose a stream of facts to feed a certain lens so that you buy my book. That's procession. And it starts with a singular idea that you choose way back at the core when you're like, what is this story? What is the thing I'm trying to get across to my audience, whoever my audience might be? This is what I want them to think about. Not just this is a fact, this is a fact, this is a fact. Not just information devoid of emotion, but the synthesis of the two, because pitching is information plus emotion. Now, if I've laid all this stuff out to you, and it sounds pretty straightforward in the abstract, great. So far in the abstract, it totally is. But where the bump in the road comes in, where the difficulty escalates, is trying to help you convert that abstract into your own work, because there's one more tool that you need to have. And given the day I've had, it's going to be a tough slog for us to talk through this tool, but we're going to talk through this tool all the same. You need a level of confidence. I know some of you out there are just chortling away in disbelief. I know. I did it too when I rehearsed. I legit sat down and laughed and really debated coming up with a different tool. But there has to be some level of inherent confidence in this. You don't know how it's going to go. You don't know if the person's going to say yes. But that doesn't mean you don't know your work well enough to talk about it authoritatively. You can be wrong. It doesn't disqualify you from humanity. But you're the best authority on your work. Even the people who come and hire me to coach or edit or help them with their work in whatever way, I'm never going to know more than they do about their thing because they wrote it. And I'm going to, at some point, have to ask them questions. Like, if you hire me to help you market your book, I'm going to have to sit down with you and ask you questions. What's this book about? Who's in it? How many characters do you have? What's the world like? I'm going to ask just general questions in order for me to build an image. But you're the resource here. You're the expert. You get to tell me, okay, well, it's got this, it's got that, it's got this, it's got that. And we can build it from there. You have to have that confidence. Because again, we go back to another tool we're using. This is just statement and facts. You're just telling me what's in the book. You're not judging it, and you're not doing my judging for me. Especially if you hire me, I'm not going to judge it. You're hiring me. I'm not going to sit there and go, well, yeah, it's probably a shitty idea. Like, I'm not doing that. The whole point of this, the whole instrument here is, you know your thing better than anybody else, so why not speak about it like you know exactly what you're talking about? Because you do. Because you wrote it. Maybe you wouldn't be surprised the number of people who stumble over that particular point. I stumble over that particular point, and I'm talking to a microphone for a living. I get it. Confidence is hard, especially in a world that seems destined to want to knock you down more times than pick you up, or the number of people who seem to be racing towards a thing that you feel like you're 10 miles behind, or you feel like you'll never get there because who knows what everybody else is doing, but they seem to be making it. I get it. I know. But nobody and none of that takes away from the authority you have over your own work. You are the best authority to pitch on your work. You just need to understand that you have tools at your disposal, like statements, like facts, like questions, like appeals, like combinations of images and nouns and evocation and all these other different things, and even a box of other stuff we didn't even talk about, to all help you shape the thing you need to be confident in. Because again, if we're talking about traditional publishing, they're looking for a writer who can come out and go, this is my book. People are going to like it. This is why I'm pitching it. And if we're talking self-publishing or hybrid publishing, something like that, you need confidence. Because if you write some wishy-washy sales copy, people will not buy that book. And you can hem and haw and prevaricate and, oh, well, kind of, sir, I know there's a lot of books out there. You could pick lots of them. Yep, totally could. Totally could. But when it's time to talk about your work, you got to talk about your work like it's the right choice. You don't have to go out there and be like hyper sleazy. You don't have to be out there all like finger guns. Hey, sport, I know you're a person who's you've got discriminating taste. Like, you don't need to go out there and do that shit. But you do need to go out there and say, hey, if you're looking for a fantasy novel, I've got a great one for you. Here it is. So there are these two small, hairy children who have to walk across most of Europe on their way to drop jewelry into a volcano. It's pretty rad. There's some trees. They fight. It's cool. A lot of singing. A lot of goddamn singing. But it's cool. You'll like it. Not my best pitch for Lord of the Rings, but still, it's the idea. You have to know that when you talk about your work, you are the best person to talk about your work, and you are allowed to talk about your work, whether you arrange it in a certain amount of lenses for the sake of pitching, whether you organize your thoughts and proceed them in a certain way, whether you decide to go, I'm going to tell this from a romantic side because I want to attract a romance audience, or whether I want to talk about a thriller side, so I come in at a thriller way, and I can pick and choose, and I can do all of those things. I don't have to do all of them in the same pitch, but I can have a thriller pitch, and I can have a romance pitch, and I can write a query letter that frames the mystery, and I can have a sales copy back blurb that talks about the love story. You can shape all of these things. You just need to sit down and do them. You just need to figure out the lenses, figure out the tools you're going to use, and then you just need to practice them. And you need to be able to craft them. And no one says you have to get it perfect the first time, and no one says you only have to write one and then you never do it again. You're going to do a lot of these because not every pitch is equal, and pitches are not one size fits all. It's lots of different stuff shaped over time, built in lots of different ways. But you have to believe in your ability to do it. And even if you've got to horse shit lie to yourself until you're there and fake it till you make it, a sentence I am growing to, kind of spar with a little, because you've already made it. There's no reason to fake it because you made the book. You wrote it. I'm guessing just mathematically there's got to be some percentage of the people watching this or listening to this who, I guess, stole somebody else's book, but I'm pretty sure they're the minority. So you wrote the book. There's nothing to fake. You wrote it for a reason. Now, whether that reason was something overt, like, hey, I'm trying to publish this thing, or broader and conceptual, like, I wrote this thing because I love telling stories, and selling this would be also super rad, that's fine. But you made a thing. You can be proud of it. Aren't you proud of the other stuff you make? Why would the story suddenly be different? If you're about to say, well, it feels more vulnerable. No, you make plenty of stuff that's vulnerable. You just don't think about it the same way. You don't have to fake this. You're the expert. You're the one person who I wouldn't want to fake. Let me fake. I don't know your story. Until you tell me, until you educate me, until you inform me, until you equip me to do so. But you're the expert. I want to know what you love about this thing. And I want you to be able to talk about what you love in lots of different ways to lots of different people for lots of different reasons. But pitching doesn't have to be this hyper fearful, hyper anxious, oh my God, it's a pitch. Oh my God, I have to talk about my work. Oh my God, I'm a terrible salesperson. You might be an uncomfortable salesperson and you might have difficulty connecting with people, but Those are learned skills. They're practicable. Practicable? You can practice them. That word's going to sound funny in my head, but yeah, you can develop them. You can get better at this. You don't need to like bash your head against the wall 1,000 times and then suddenly stumble your way into it. This is a thing you can apply tools to. This is a thing you can ask for help for, which brings me to, hey, if you want help with this, jump over to Writer Next Door. I didn't put the graphic up. You can jump over to writernextdoor.com and on the top of the page, click book an appointment. There's a free appointment you can book. And I will be happy to help you build a pitch, write a query, figure out what the hell you're doing, sort out your ideas, anything you want. And then when you're ready to attack it in a more structured way, in a more intensive way, there are other sessions you can book that will help you do exactly the same thing with even more detail. Whatever you want to do, you can get better at this. You just need to practice. And I'm trying to give you some tools to help make that practice a little less swirly, a little less wild, because this is just talking to somebody else, just like I'm doing now. Just like you're going to do 20 minutes from now, just like you're going to do tomorrow. We're just going to talk to some people. It doesn't have to be fancy. We don't have to tuck our shirts in. We don't have to suddenly adopt some kind of weird, strange persona, even if we use a pen name. We're just talking to some people about some stuff we like. Hey, man, do you want a root beer? Is as much a pitch as, in a world where criminals run lawless, one rich psychotic billionaire dresses up in a rubber suit and punches people. They're both pitches. They're just for different things, aimed at different people, trying to reach a different goal. Well, maybe not a different goal, because they're both asking you to engage with it. But the specifics of that goal, root beer versus Batman, different things. But that's the idea. That's what we're going for. So I hope in these 90 minutes we've spent together, I've taken some of the fear and I've deflated it a little. I've given you a couple tools, facts, statements, questions, implied questions, evocative language. I've given you a couple tools, confidence, hopefully, to build and shape whatever it is you need to. It's okay. Now, you're going to mess this up. That's not because you're bad, dumb, or stupid. It's just that this is difficult, and it gets better over time if you practice. So you're going to need to practice. Again, writernextdoor.com, book a free appointment. You can practice. You can. I had somebody today. Here's the thing. I'll tell you this. I had somebody today book a free 30-minute appointment and then tell me to just put me on speaker and just listen. And for 27 of those 30 minutes, they just talked their way through their book. Well, I think I want to go about this. What about this? I'm just going to rehearse pitches, John. Fine. It's your half hour, whatever you want to do. And I sat there, and every once in a while, because AT&T's a terrible phone provider, I had to stop and have them repeat themselves. But I didn't sit there and go, no, that's not going to work, because they didn't want me to. They just wanted me to listen, so I just listened. And I listened, and they asked me at the end of it, what did I think? And I gave them like 2 ideas. And I said, hey, if you want to come back and do this, book another appointment, I'd be happy to. And they will. And that's fine. You're going to get better at this if you practice it. Side note, if you're a Patreon person, so that's, where's my graphic? It's over here. Nope, it's this side. Patreon.com/John helps you create. If you're a Patreon person, you've got access to the Discord. You can make all the pitches you want anytime. Just pitch your hearts out. And I'm more than happy to sit there and go, good pitch, not good pitch. Here's what works. Here's what didn't. Patreon gets you access to the Discord. Makes all the difference. Okay? Are there, before I get another mouthful of tea, questions, issues, etc.? Else we'll get out of here for the evening. Yes, you should come join us in the Discord. I am slowly, after I think 3 or 4 years, finally getting a handle on how a Discord works. After being a part of some really great ones and then being a part of some really awful ones, I've sort of synthesized, I think, a community, or at least the template for a community that really works. We're small, we're crafty, we're aggressively creative. Come hang out with us. $2 a month. It's worth it. Question: do you have any suggestions for how to improve how you handle unexpected questions about your work, book, etc.? Yes, I do. Actually, that's a great question here. We're going to throw that up so that the viewing public can see that. How do you handle unexpected questions about your work, particularly in an interview? Okay, like in an interview for a job, somebody's bringing up like, hey, I see you write a book. Okay. Remember the context of the situation you're in when you get asked. That's going to determine how you answer. Because chances are you're that too, but also like a promotional appearance. Okay, I'm going to split this into two. All right, I'm going to handle it in terms of like way out of left field question and promotional question, because the answers are kind of different. Like they're diverse enough that they each warrant a full-on answer. So let's suppose a question comes out of left field. Job interview, whatever. Given the context of what it is you're trying to accomplish, you might want to go with a broader, more diplomatic answer, especially if you're writing something that is perhaps a little potentially risky, not risque, but risky relative to what you're trying to do. So for instance, you're applying for a job and you're an erotic poet, and you've, for some reason, mentioned on your resume, hey, I'm also a poet, and somebody talking to you about this potential job they're hiring you for goes, oh, what kind of poetry? If you talk about, oh, I write poems about aroused genitals, that might not help you in the overall setting you're in. But if you might want to talk about, oh, I write really kind of, I'm learning my style, which is true. You are still learning your style. We're not lying. We're not embellishing. I'm learning my style. I'm just trying to, I'm really currently working on writing about the human experience. Still true, just a little vague. We've zoomed out a little to take some of that awkwardness out. We haven't lied. We've just backed up a little bit to give the reader, the listener, the other person in the conversation, a sense of buffer so that they don't have to contend with, what do you mean you talk about genitals? Now, are there cases where you just want to go in and say, like, hey, man, I write about butts? Cool. I would do that. But I am somebody who doesn't end up in a whole lot of interview situations for, like, jobs and stuff, because most anybody who's coming to me knows why they're coming to me. And I'm okay with that. But if we're talking about a promotional experience where we're talking about our own work and we get asked a question, give it a sincere answer. All right, so on Wednesdays, I ask if people have questions, right? If I get asked something that I genuinely haven't considered, or if there's a comment in chat that I genuinely haven't thought of, I stop and I think about it. Now, granted, I don't have a whole lot of like time to sit there and go, give me 10 minutes and I'll get back to you. And then I just sit here staring into space for 10 minutes, like I have to answer you. But if you're getting asked about your writing or your process or your thing itself, give them an answer, even if it's complicated, because you can always come back and go, like, all right, so they'll ask you like, well, what's it like? Where do you get your ideas? The most generic of writer questions. And you talk about, oh, well, this particular book, because we want to focus. We don't want to like talk about everything. We want to focus one thing because we have a purpose to our promotion. Oh, well, this one book came to me because of XYZ situation. And you deliver that and you move on. And if 5 minutes later, in response to or even out of the blue, you come up with more things to say, you can always come, hey, I want to go back and address this other thing that lady asked me about XYZ. It's XYZ, but there's also this other thing. And then you organize and change tangents. You go in a different direction to talk about to answer the question, and you give it more depth. You might feel like you're on the spot, and to some degree you are, but you've got to just take a deep breath, realize that although it feels like there's some kind of great existential threat and you're under assault, it's just a question, and you can navigate it. And you've probably been asked this question in other contexts before, or you've given an answer to a question that's sort of similar to it, a sibling question, and you can steer the conversation that way. The other thing you can do, I used to do this way back in the old workshop days. Not so much I think they were even the sober workshop days. So we're going like way back. You can randomly ask the people around you just to periodically throughout the day ask you questions. Just like tell them to intentionally try and catch you off guard, asking you a question about your work. In the Pink Panther movies, there's a fairly problematic depiction of an Asian trope. But in the whole series, Clouseau, the bumbling detective, is constantly out with Kato, the Asian manservant trope. I know it's a problem. I know. But the two of them are constantly physically fighting one another. It's part of the slapstick of the series. And this whole sort of like Kato leaps out from behind the curtains to attack Clouseau, and Clouseau must, very slapstickily, that's not a word, very comedically defend himself and fight back. That surprise attack, in the film was played for laughs, but it's that same sort of atmosphere you want to engender when it comes to preparing for promotional experiences. Because who knows what questions you're going to get. I don't know what questions I'm going to get in a chat on a Wednesday. Yeah, I'm assuming people show up. But, like, who knows what you're going to ask? You could ask me something totally out of left field. And I might have to say, okay, here you go. It might take me a second. There might have to be an or an or an I don't know. And then I can circle back on my own time when I do think about a thing. I've said that before in chats. Hey, here's, I think this is my answer. Give me 5 minutes. If I come back to it, I'll get back to it. And then sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. But you can't try and predict everybody's questions. You'll paralyze yourself. You'll go out of your head. So what you want to do instead is try to stay loose on your feet. And you can prepare to some degree for the idea of like, oh, questions are coming wherever. I got to be ready to go. And over time, you just get more comfortable at it. But yeah, there's always that sense of like, oh, they've asked a question I have not prepared for. What do I do? Just try and answer it sincerely. And it's okay to say you don't know a thing. They're not going to like you less. If anything, they'll be more pleased that you gave them an honest answer as opposed to something canned. Great question. Anything else? Any other questions? Else we shall depart. One more mouthful of tea. Oh, it's my pleasure. I love answering questions. You know that. All right. Let's get out of here. I do want to make one note. Well, two notes. One, podcast people. Hi. You're probably listening to this. I hope you're still listening to this. Thank you for listening to this, by the way. Things are going really well. We're going to keep doing what we're doing podcast-wise. But if you're a podcast person, since you're missing some of the great visuals for things, I want to make sure, especially coming in April and May, there might be a couple extra podcast things going out. So enjoy your bonuses. Just a note. All right. Streaming people, YouTube people. Hi. Thanks for watching this. If you're watching this on YouTube, please don't forget to like and subscribe and click the bell for notifications. It legit actually does something with metrics. Every time I've said that, people actually occasionally sometimes do it. And when I don't, things just kind of sail on by. So thank you for subscribing. If you liked this stuff, thanks for clicking the bell and hitting the button and doing all the YouTube things. If you're watching this on Twitch, following is free. If you want to support this, feel free to subscribe. I'd be more than happy to, enjoy your subscription. You literally provide me an ability to feed myself. And if you want to support everything else I do over there, patreon.com/John helps you create. $2 a month keeps the whole thing moving. So that's pitching and taking the fear out of your work. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any other questions and you're watching this on YouTube, leave them down in the comments below. Chat. Thank you so much for your time, patience, love, and care. Listeners, hey, how you doing? I hope you enjoyed this. I look forward to hearing or seeing you soon. Feel free to leave comments, favorites, etc. wherever you listen to your podcast. Ratings are good sometimes, so leave one. Takes 2 seconds, saves a life. That said, the next time I'll be here in your face and in your ears and doing all the things will be Wednesday, April the 13th. So 2 days from now, we'll be doing the usual Wednesday Night Writers Chat. I look forward to seeing it, hearing you,
getting your questions, giving you some answers, and helping you write and succeed. So until then, guys, have a good night. I'll talk to you real soon. See ya.